During one of our classes recently, I kind of touched on this portion of Scripture, turning to Ecclesiastes chapter 7. And I looked at it a little. I just want to look at it a little more today. Running the risk of reading dead horses. And sometimes what we need to do repeat things. This portion of Scripture has some very unique things that can be easily taken and misunderstood. Let's just go ahead and read Ecclesiastes 7, and we're going to start at verse 15. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness. There's a wicked man that prolongs his life in his wickedness. Now, let's just stop right there. These are things that we could say demonstrate something with regard to, he's looking at the days of his vanity. We could say the realm of vanity, the realm of futility. That which is under the sun that he observes in the light of creation and the light of humanity. And you see things that we call, that's injustice, that's not right, that doesn't make sense, it shouldn't be that way. That a person who is deemed righteous, and we have to look at the righteousness he's talking about, and that, and all that, but a man who is deemed in this realm of things righteous, good person, we say that way, and yet they die early. And then you have a wicked man who prolongs his life and seems to live forever. Doesn't make sense. It's not fair. And that's part of what Solomon is doing here, the preacher. He will give advice in the next verses that seem just nuts, but it's based upon something he's observing, something that Christianity has delved into and tried to change it. And tried to say, if you this, if you ... then this will be. And they're looking here to tell you and assure you that that will be so in this realm of futility. We'll talk about examples of that. But what he's doing is basically painting the picture that in this realm, earth, sight, sound, mankind, humanity, guess what you're never going to get? What you think you're going to get. What you think you deserve. It's not just. It doesn't give you the balloons and flowers you think you deserve because you've done everything right. And the problem is Christianity comes in and tries to settle that issue and say, if you do this properly to God, these things will happen on the earth that are pleasant and good. Nothing bad will ever happen. You'll have this, and it gets to a point where it's not just good things that's going to happen to you. Then it becomes condemning to you if they do happen. I know someone recently battling things, sickness, being told by Christians, well-meaning, God's gonna heal you, no doubt. Prophesied over, God's gonna take care of you. Guess what happened? They died. And guess the feeling that that person had, knowing getting worse and worse and worse. You know what they thought? Something I'm doing. or not doing right. I don't have enough faith. So because I don't have enough faith, this is not happening. And what he's showing you is it's vanity to try to bring the things of the Spirit into the realm of the earth and try to make the one influence the other. That's what we were always talking about. That's what Christianity is become. But he says, all the things I've seen in these days of my man. A man that is righteous will perish, while a man that is wicked will live forever. Prolong his days. So here's what he says. And it's not what it may seem on the surface, but let's read verse 16. So be not righteous over much. I mean, that sounds like the worst advice that anyone can ever give a person, right? Just don't try to be righteous. Just don't try to be overly good, overly righteous. But there's a reason he's saying it. We'll look at it. Be not righteous over much, or overly righteous. Neither try to make yourself overly wise. Why should you destroy yourself? And honestly, that's exactly what happens in those pursuits, right? Destruction, disappointment. Be not over wicked much. Neither be thou foolish. Why should you die before your time? And what he's trying to show them is not, hey, just give up. Don't even try. What he's showing them is the vanity of attempting to make the earth and the things of it equal to the things of spirit. And we're going to see that in a moment. Why? Because he has observed things in the days of his futility. It is good. Here's what he said in verse 18. It's good that you should take hold of this, what he said, his advice. Take hold of this. Also from this do not withdraw your hand, for he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. Now let's read that in another translation. I'm going to start in verse 17. Be not evil over much, and be not foolish. Why? This is from the Bible in Basic English. And other more literal translations will give the same idea. It is good to take this in your hand and not to keep your hand from that. He who has the fear of God will be free of both, of the two. What is that? Being not overly righteous, being not overly wicked. What is he saying? Those that fear God will be delivered or escape from, that's what that word means, to escape from both of these extremes. You see what we're doing? In one commentary, he will tell us that we are to reach what he calls the golden media via. Right? So what he's saying don't be wicked, don't be righteous, don't try to be either one of these extremes. Don't put your hand to these things. Don't try to exert yourself in these directions or keep from going this direction and go this direction more and more. That's what Christianity is. It's what it's become. So what do? Well, we just try to be a good Christian and get in the middle somewhere and say, well, I'm not perfect, but I'm better. Right? The old idea of I'm a sinner, saved by grace. I haven't reached this yet, but I'm not here anymore. And so we just try to stay somewhere, and that's what we call a balanced Christian life. But he's about to go into this and say this. This is what he says in verse 18. But those that fear God, those that come to know God, will recognize these two extremes are not of God. There's something beyond that. There's something above that. And if they fear God and come to Him, they will come to a reality. And in that reality, called truth, called wisdom, as this will be, wisdom of God. They'll come to this wisdom and they will escape both of these. Why? Because both right and wicked are both determined down below in the realm of futility. That's what he's showing you. Your definition of righteous and your definition of wicked and your pursuits toward and away from one or the other is not spiritual. It's not Christian life. It's not spiritual life. It's not the wisdom of God. The wisdom of God is that which is above it. The truth of God, that which is spirit, is above your righteousness and your wickedness. It is above it. It is a reality that is far removed from men and his measurements and his definitions and him trying not to be this and trying to be this more and trying to be, It's not where it's found, because what you're going to do is the very thing he said. Why should you destroy yourself with these pursuits? I promise you, most Christians today live under this. And they live in this vain, futile, hamster wheel of a life, and they're trying their best. But God has given them something greater, better, something far removed. But they're fighting this battle because nobody tells them this is where you are. This is the reality. I put a podcast out recently called Electric Chair Theology. And got some attention. And basically the title was clickbait, trying to say, okay, you need to click on this. And to some degree it worked, but here's the thing. What is electric chair theology? It's called the gospel. It's not something different. It's telling them this. Because this is telling people that their Christian life or their life before God is a process of eliminating this and acquiring this. It's a process. And to get to the end of that process, you're going to have to live for 250 years to try to manifest in the earth the perfection that they know God demands, but you'll never arrive to in yourself, by your effort, by your works. So what is electric chair theology? Well, it's the gospel that tells a person, this is what I'm saying, if you have a person that's received Christ and has 3 seconds, 3 minutes to live on this earth, is about to be fried in the electric chair, the gospel of Christ is just as real and valid and effectual for that person than it is for a person who has another 30 years to live on this earth. You know why? Because nothing on this earth is what measures. The measurement's not found in the length of your life so that you can keep growing, keep understanding in this realm. Guess what? The Spirit of God is going to teach us whether we're in or out of the body. The Spirit of God will continue to show us the salvation that God has once and for all brought into the soul through new birth, through grace. What God has gifted the soul in the person of Christ is as real to this person as it is to this person. It is just as absolute in the person that was born again 1 minute ago as it is one who's been born again 50 years. Doesn't matter. Christ is who he is in that soul. And he has brought that soul to completeness, blessed with all spiritual blessings. And that is not a qualification you finally get to. That is an act on God's part through his work of mercy and grace. That's what God has bestowed because man could not attain it himself. Man could not acquire that. Man could never rise to that level. God had to bring that which is above into the soul of man and complete that soul. Bring completion to a soul that has no hope for it otherwise. That is his part. That is his work. And again, it is just as valid in one as it is in the other. Now, we do grow. We do understand. We do come to comprehend, but you're not comprehending something that's coming in bits and pieces. You are comprehending by the work of the Spirit of truth, revealing Christ in the soul. You're comprehending what God bestowed at the very start. What grace has provided in its fullness at the very beginning of his fullness have all we received. These are not qualifying statements. It doesn't have caveats. It doesn't say if. It says this is real. And that's what people need to understand. This stuff about try not to be this, try not to be this, it's not real. That's religion, but it's not real. In this realm, we practice religion. In this realm, we partake in reality. And we grow in reality. Here, we're just made numb by religion. And it becomes either a toil and a strife and a labor and a work, or we just give up and get tired of the labor, the toil. Or we die and take our last breath with a sense of incompleteness and maybe even condemnation, wondering when we close our eyes forever, what's there waiting on us. I'm not just talking, I'm telling you things that I've seen. People who have struggled with this type of Christianity, with this type of relationship with God, when God in truth and his wisdom has provided something beyond it, greater than this toil. Because what he said, while men want to practice here, because this is where you also find your self-righteousness. This is where you can boast. I mean, it's not just all bad, right? As far as we think about it. It's not just, oh, I'm so condemned. Sometimes we hit that sweet spot, right? We get to that level and we think we can rise so we can glory and boast. See, any religion, any type of Christianity or whatever that may have you laying in your bed at night saying your prayer before you go to sleep. And either this, know that you have messed up during the day. You're praying for forgiveness for that mess up. Or you're thinking back on the successes of the day and you're saying, man, I really did good. I really did good today. I really made God proud today. Those are the two extremes, right? Instead of like the real thing, doesn't take this into account, really. Because it doesn't exist with a conscience of me at all. But this is really what he's talking about, because we're going to get further down in this. This is not I, but Christ. This is of God. God of us. This is all of us. We'll say it's God. We'll say God helps or God, God checks me. I remember that. I said that so-and-so and the Lord checked me. Okay. What about when he doesn't check? Maybe we need to think. Maybe I'm just saying, I shouldn't have said that. Here, You don't have that. You don't have the hits and misses. No such thing. And it's hard for us to fathom a life of salvation that is that absolute, that concrete, that nothing I do toward whatever hinders this. When God calls my soul back to know a reality that He has placed in it, He's not saying, you really messed this up. He's saying, come. To think that we have the ability to uproot this. I have the ability to uproot this every day. Because it's all up to me. My choices, my thoughts, whatever. This is ever changing, but this changes not. And again, you reach this extreme, and guess what you're going to find? Solomon just said it. You think you've reached the pinnacle of good and righteous in the earth, in the things of the flesh, in the feudal realm, as he calls it, and guess what you're going to find out? Just what he said here. I found that a righteous man perishes before his time. How fair is that? Get over here, I found these people never die. Remember the saying, only the good die young? Right? Well, that's because that's what people see. They see how unfair it is when everything's measured in the natural. When everything's measured in the realm of men. Guess what else is unfair? Unequal. This, when it's defined, because you see it, it's no different as far as men define it. It's not different at all as far as man's idea, his concept. So, he is not meant to say, just do this, try to do more of this, and try not to do more of that, or stay away from these two extremities. What he's actually doing is getting us to look beyond the realm of futility, to lay hold of that which is beyond both of these earthly, fleshly measures. He's trying to call us to something that is above. Why? Look at these words. He that fears God will be delivered or escape from both of these things. Why? Because he comes to something greater. Wisdom strengthens the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. Now, we talked about that our last time when I touched on it. We went to the wisdom of God that's manifest in the fact that Christ is made unto us righteousness, and sanctification, and redemption. That's the wisdom that brings strength greater than 10 mighty men in the city. Why is that necessary? And why is it futile? For this to be how we measure salvation or Christianity or spiritual life or any of it, a relationship with God. Why does it not make sense? Well, this should sound familiar to you. There is not a just man on earth that does good and sins not. It's Romans chapter 3. No, not one. There is none righteous. No, not one. So why is this vain? Why is this battle that we're constantly fighting futile, empty, with no result, leaves a person empty and condemned or either self-righteous? Why is it futile? Because of what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a man that couldn't be righteous if his life depended on it. There's none of it in him. He can't stay away from wickedness because that's his nature. That's who he is. And he can't be righteous because that's not his nature. It's the nature of another. Now, he can be righteous as far as man's view and man's definition. But again, that's exactly what Solomon here is trying to show us. There is a definition that's here. But there is the truth and wisdom of God that's here. there is something beyond man's view, man's attainable attributes. And that's part of it. If it's something attainable for us, then it is not of God at all. If it is in our power to get, it cannot be above. It cannot be of grace. It cannot be of God. Because, again, what we have through the work of the Spirit of Christ dwelling in our heart, what we have through salvation is that which is of Him and not of us. We will say, and we, again, this is Christianity 101. You need to be crucified to the base nature. I'm using language that I've heard, right? Your base nature, your sinful nature, needs to be crucified. Okay. What about this? What about that good part? What about that righteous you? We want to hold on to that. Because what we've done, instead of there being this division between above and beneath, we made this division. And we make this the pursuit. And we give our definition, we give our meanings, our methods, our whatever, and still miss what is above it. The whole work of the cross, the whole work of salvation is not to get you to divide between these two fleshly things, these two man-centered and man-defined things, and say, you've got the better one, they've got the worse one, you're in good shape. No, it's to crucify both. Your wickedness and your righteousness. In fact, this is seen more often than this as what Paul talks about and all the others. Let's go to Paul. Galatians chapter 2. He's confronting Peter. Right? He confronts Peter because Peter has played the hypocrite. And he was eating with the Gentiles because Peter knew and understood that eating meats and eating those things that the Gentiles ate, being in fellowship with the Gentiles who were believers by faith, was not a problem. But yet, here's the people coming from Jerusalem. What does he do? He backs away from the Gentiles. And he won't eat with them again. Paul sees it and rebukes him and says, why? When they're not here, you live like a Gentile. But when they show up, you back away from them. Even we who had the law and had the righteousness of the law, even we, for righteousness to actually be a thing that we possess, had to believe in Christ. Because no man, we know this, no man is justified by the law. And the whole thing keeps playing out. His whole argument with Peter keeps playing out to Galatians 2:20-21. That's still the I am crucified with Christ. That's all part of a rebuke of Peter. What is he trying to show him? Here's where you're still trying to live, Peter. Here's what you're telling the Gentiles that is necessary. You're bringing it back into the earth and saying what you eat means something. Meats and drinks and holy days and touch not, taste not, handle not. That's the validity of this. Paul says, the validity of it is found here. I am crucified. And I live. But I do not live where these measures determine anything. It is Christ who lives in me. It is not me who lives. I don't define right. I don't define anything. I don't define perfection. I don't define holiness. I don't define any of it. Christ lives in me. That's the reality we've come to. And then he tells, because this is exactly what the Galatians are being fooled into. This kind of performance-based idea of salvation, of relationship with God, going back and wanting to be circumcised, and holy days and festivals. Same thing he tells to the Colossians. He says to them, are you so foolish? Having begun in the Spirit, are you now made perfect in the flesh? What are they trying to do? They're trying to do exactly what Solomon says here. Trying to be over righteous. They're trying to be overly good. So they are grasping for whatever man tells them is a way to do it. And Paul is saying, here's the only way it is possible. Not me. Christ is. Because what he's saying to them, actually, if you look at it in the Greek, the word he says, are you now made perfect? It is actually a word that means to complete or fulfill further. It means to fulfill in excess. How can you fulfill something fulfilled? How can you bring something to a greater completion than complete? That's what he's saying to them. Are you, by your works, trying to further complete what God has already completed? In fact, this is it's 1909 to perfect further. This is what the Greek Thayer's lexicon says, basically. This word is a marker of an addition or an attempt to add to what it already exists. Trying to add to something that's already there. That's the foolishness. That's the foolishness of this pursuit. As a believer, this pursuit is vain, it's empty, it means nothing, it doesn't matter. It matters to us, very much so, until we see the true weight, the true significance of a righteousness, of a perfection that has been imputed to us and not attained by us. We see the joy of that. We can boast now in a gift and not in a gain that we have gained. An attainment of our efforts and works. And that's what we boast in here, or feel condemned because we haven't quite attained it. Here we glory in a gift. We glory in the fact that we can't, but he is. We glory in the fact that it's not in our power, but he, by his power, has performed in us what was never able to be performed by us. That is the pursuit. Why? Because man is never going to do it. Man is not capable. And God understood that. And that's why he has given us his mercy. Now let's keep on going. Verse 20, there is not a just man on earth that doeth good and does not sin. Now let's jump down to verse 23. Because we're going to see this. In the light of verse 6. All this have I proved by wisdom. Verse 23 again of Ecclesiastes 7. I said I will be wise. Now, this is the word. I proved all this by wisdom. I said to myself, I will be wise. But what about this wisdom he's after? It was far from me. That's what we have to say. That's what we have to see and understand. The thing we're pursuing, the thing we're always after, Even in Christ, apparently, it seems to be, they're always pursuing and after. It's far from me. Verse 24. And that which is far off, that which was far from me, it is exceedingly deep. Who can find that? You see the futility. He understands. I remember one time reading a book by Brother Sparks, and he was making a comparison between us and God and how we're trying to, and how it really is, basically, and how vain our pursuits is toward it, toward trying to be equal with God and all that stuff. And he said it's like the gardener walking in a garden. And this potato is wanting to have a relationship with the gardener. And he's looking up at the gardener and he's talking. You know, he can't, there's no communication there. He can't do it. He can't make that happen. There is no compatibility between the two. And when man is trying to be this, and man is trying to attain this, that's how compatible it is. It's like a gardener and a potato being equal. Not equal. Ever. Salvation is not even the fact that he's made us equal to or the same as. It is he has gifted that which is of himself to us. It's a gift. Again, it's not bringing me up to his level. It is bringing his substance into my soul. It's bringing all that he is into me as a gift so that I cannot boast that now I'm equal with him, boast that I have anything on my own. I can only boast in the mercy of God that has given this to me. Because my pursuits are few. And this is the thing that we read in Colossians. Because it's the same pursuit, and I'm going out, skipping over a bunch of this stuff. But you see the same idea, right, with the middle wall partition. The Jews had done this, right? Made this division between Jew and Gentile by the law. That was never really God's intent. The law was a division here. That was the real bit of the wall. That's the real problem. This is what he took to the cross. Because what the law actually did was not divide man from man, Jew from Gentile. It showed the division between man and God, regardless of him being a Jew or Gentile. But the Jew had said, "You're holy, you're not." That was their law. Again, that's how we do it too. We just don't call it Jew or Gentile. Guess what we call it? We call it Adam and Christ. We call it good, evil. Same, it's the same thing. We just give another definition. We're like the U.S. government. We just redefine the word. Right. Same thing. So, this same pursuit, we're going to see the futility of it, and Peter faced the same thing, right? He was a man, he was a believer, he was in Christ, had the same mentality as he had previously, and so God gives you this vision of these animals. And he says, kill and eat. And he said, whoa. I know this is a test, right? I'm pure God. I have never touched anything on here. And he thought he had one up God and said, well, good, you passed the test. And guess what God said? How dare you? How dare you put yourself above something that I have cleansed and say, I'm better? Basically, that's what he said. Don't call anything I have made clean common and unclean. There's the judgments right here. You know what the judgment here is? Life or death. And it's simple. Him or not him. Our superficial little division means nothing. Nothing. We fall out because of them, and all the stuff we've done. when this truth remains, regardless of our arguments, debates, it's all stupid. But then he goes, and we know what happens in Cornelius. They hear the gospel and all of that. He's preached the gospel to them. But that was the same thing that Peter said. It's the same thing that Paul was attempting to do, because he saw wicked and righteousness could be in the same place. He saw it wasn't different. It wasn't a different thing. Remember? Every time I try to do what the law says, I try to be good and righteous according to the law, what is there? Evil. You know what that shows? It exists here. Doesn't matter. It's still there. In fact, Ecclesiastes 3 says this, and this is where, there is a time to every purpose under heaven. Then he brings verse 16. Moreover, I saw under the sun, notice the place he finds it, under the sun, in the realm of futility. I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there. And in the place of, in the place of righteousness, iniquity was still there. How futile is that? How vain is that? You're trying to define something. I'm perfect. Guess what's still there? You. When it's your perfection. When it's your righteousness. What I'm saying is God has crucified us from our righteousness, not just our bad. He has circumcised us from that which we deem perfect in ourselves, that which we have attained by our works, that which we can boast in because we think it's of some value. That's why Paul could say, what was gained to me. He's not talking about the junk. He's talking about the thing he boasted in. I counted it nothing. But I found something more excellent. More excellent. And that's Christ himself. And so my hope is that I am found in him, having nothing of my own. That's the boast. That's a real boast. That's a heart boasting in reality, not just in the practice of the acquiring of religion. It's a man that can boast in something that doesn't belong to him. It belongs in another. And it's a gift of another. So let's get to Colossians, because this is the same thing. We're going to read verse 8, Colossians 2. We're going to read a good portion of this, and then we'll be done. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy, empty and vain deceit, after the traditions of men, after the elements or rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. Because in Christ dwells the fullness of the Godhead bodily, and you are complete in him, who is the head of all principality and power, in whom also you are circumcised with a circumcision made without hands, putting off the body of the sins of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ. Now this is the work that has brought us from here to here, brought us out of this man, out of this condition. Buried with him in baptism, wherein also you are risen with him through the faith of the operation of God, who hath raised him from the dead. And you, being dead in your sins and the uncircumcision of your flesh, has he quickened together with him, having forgiven you all trespasses, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and he took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross, having spoiled principalities and powers. He made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. Therefore let no man judge you in meat, or drink. See what he's doing? He's taking man out of the picture, saying, this is the division God has made. He's brought you into something outside of this realm. Now, do not let men bring you back. Don't let men bring you back into an earthly view of a heavenly reality. It gets your juices flowing again so that you can try and try and try. That's what man does. Let him not judge you in meats, drinks, respect of holy days, the new moon, Sabbath days, which are shadow of things that were to come. But the body, the substance of those things, he is Christ. Let no man beguile you of your reward. Again, telling them they had one. Telling them they received the reward. Not that they're still running a race, waiting to win it. They have already received the reward. Let no man take it from you, or judge you not fit to have it. That's what we do. We assess each other's fitness level. Let no man beguile you of the reward in voluntary humility, and worshiping of angels, intruding into things which he has not seen, vainly puffed up at his fleshly mind, not holding the head, in which all the body by joints and bands have nourishment ministered, knit together, increaseth with the increase of God. That goes back to the words, do not be overly righteous. Overly, that word means abounding and increasing. Where's the increase truly? An increase with the increase of God, not the increase of man. Wherefore, if you be dead with Christ from the rudiments of the world, why, though living in that world, are you subject to these ordinances? Touch not, taste not, handle not, which are to perish with the using after the commandments and doctrines of men. Which things have indeed a show of wisdom, in real worship, humility, neglecting of the body, but have no honor in the satisfying of the flesh. That actually, in the English Standard Version, it's better translated at the end of it. These have indeed an appearance of wisdom, by promoting self-made religion, asceticisms, and severity to your body. These are all things still practiced today. In variation, methods. But what are they? They are of no value in actually stopping the indulgences of the flesh. Why? Because they are indulgences of the flesh. Stopping, do this, don't do this, but do this is not going to change anything. You're just changing the method. It's still of no worth, of no value. He removes these things from the external, the superficial endeavors. He's trying to focus our attention and bring our true experience in our true realm of being and existence. Because now he says that, seeing that you have been risen, seek the things that are. Don't be righteous much. Don't be wicked much. Try to stay in the middle. Try to be as good a Christian as you possibly can. And then one day, it'll all be good. No, it's all good. You know what you see here? Still all good. All this stuff, still all good. Nothing's changed as far as to this. Set your affection on that which is above, because that's where you are. Seeing if you're risen with Christ, seek that which is above, because Christ sits there on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on the earth. Again, what is he talking about? This. The same thing he's told them now in Colossians 2, don't get involved in those things. Touch not, taste not, handle not, holy days, meats and drinks. We still do forms of that. We can't wipe our hands of that and say, oh, that was back then. No, this is still valid today because people are still looking as hard as they can for ways, means, methods. God, by one work, has brought us into something that is greater, better. Why? Because it's in no way for one moment defined in me. It is defined completely in Christ. In a relationship that we have come to through the work of Him. Set your affection on that which is above, not the things that are of the earth. Because you're dead. Same thing Paul said, right? I am crucified with Christ. That means crucified with Christ to this, to my efforts, to my work. And that's what he had to understand. He was a man who was exceeding above his compatriots under the law. He was a man who persecuted the church, and that's the very thing he had to realize. It's not just the I that was awful. It's the I that I thought was righteous that is crucified. It's the one I boasted in because I thought I'd hit my stride, my sweet spot. No, that's the same man that was crucified with Christ, dead to it all, and come to a reality where it is not me at all, but Christ who lives in me. That is the reality to which we come. You're dead. Your life is hidden with Christ in God. Same thing he's saying here in Ecclesiastes 7. Something out of our reach. Something far off from us, as to attainable, as to gettable, as to acquire it by our works, by, through physical, religious, intellectual exercise. It's not attainable. It had to be given. It had to be something he, with his open hand, gave. But there's no hope otherwise. Your life is hid with Christ, and in Christ, who is our life. You. And is God making him known in our soul, revealing this one who is our life? In our soul, we shall appear with him in glory. We will see a reality that is far above this. Not a reality we've attained, a reality that is attained to us, that has come to us, that has been gifted to us, and has been that when we received his completeness, when we became complete in him. It's not a process. This is God revealing a work that was once and for all performed and given to the souls that have believed. And this is the wisdom that Paul will say in 1 Corinthians chapter 2. This is the wisdom we preach to those who are perfect, to those who are complete. But this is the very thing he said, right? I searched. I said, I will be wise. I will know this wisdom, but it was far from me. Why? Because it is very deep. Exceeding deep. You know what that in the Hebrew actually says? It's deep, deep. Because exceeding and deep are the same word. It's deep said twice. Deep, deep. And that's what Paul says. This is things that only the Spirit of God can search out the depths. That wisdom that God has given Christ to be unto us, all spiritual. That's deep. That's beyond any of this. I mean, we just cheapen everything when we try to measure anything by me. God has something so exceedingly better, exceedingly deep, because it is Him and only Him. And this is the wisdom that we are made to know. It's past finding out. It means it's beyond our acquiring, to find it, or to attain it. And this is But Romans 11 ends by saying this: God has consigned all men, all Jew or Gentile, all men, regardless of the level they think they've arrived at, in disobedience. You're all under sin, all disobedient. Not because they were disobedient, because the disobedience of one man, Romans 5. That man's disobedience brought all men into that disobedience. That man's sin brought all to be sinners. And he did so. The law consigned it in this division, not this one, this one. The horizontal that divided earth and heaven, man and God. What did it do? Well, it showed this to be a futile division. And it removed this division by doing what? By saying all of it, both extremes, are the same. Because it's still under the headship of one disobedient man. One man. No matter what you think, no matter what you think you've attained here, it's still sinful. It's still not Christ. And he put it away. So that those here in this grave could hear the voice of the great and solid, hear the voice of the Son of Man, hear the voice of the resurrection that says, come to me, and receive something greater. Receive a life that's beyond this. Receive a righteousness that's true and real. Not a righteousness that you've attained or that you've acquired or that's measured by you in any way. I am your life. And when that life appears, we see reality as it is. It's no longer a practice of religion. Now it's a comprehension of what is real, true. It is a seeing and a beholding of God's wisdom in all its fullness. You see the face of Jesus Christ. Because it is, as he says, he consigned all to this disobedience that he would have mercy on all of them. Not so he could condemn them, so that he could bring them out of the condemnation they already had. Jesus said they're condemned already. I didn't come to condemn them. They are condemned already because they haven't believed upon me. I came that they may be saved. Then he says the depth, the riches, the wisdom, the knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and his ways beyond finding. I was reading one commentary and he said this: the most zealous of explorers into the matters of God must make this confession: it was far from me. That's true. It's far from me. Not far from me to say, but I'll get it one day. It's far from me to say, it's not up to me at all. I can't get it. I can't attain it. It's not in my ability. Not even with God's count. It's not in my ability. This has to be God and God alone. It has to be made real because he's the reality. So I pray that those of us who have received this as our life, as our condition, would set our affection on it. Set our heart to know that which is above all of this, that we fight and struggle and toil in, that we may see you, who is our life. All right.